News Talk 1450 WOL AM, where information is power.
The views and opinions of the following show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL, Radio 1 Incorporated, or their management.
Welcome to the first edition of Montgomery Mosaic. This new half-hour show will air live on the third Wednesday of each month, featuring topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. I'm Deborah Milo, and I'm hosting the show with Ron Thompson. Good morning, Ron.
Well, good morning, Deborah. Thank you so much for being here, this first edition of Montgomery Mosaic. Before we kick off the first show, I want to make sure our listeners know about the World of Montgomery Festival this weekend in Wheaton. The festival celebrates the county's diverse cultures through food, music, and dance. You can join in on the fun Sunday, October 20th from noon to 5 p.m. at Westfield Wheaton Shopping Mall. So we hope to see you there.
Great. Our guest today is someone who has broken barriers as an African American. He is Montgomery County's first African American county executive and was also the county's first African American county council member. Ike Leggett, welcome to Montgomery Mosaic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Deborah, for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Okay, County Executive, tell us about your road to public service. How did it start?
Well, it started many years ago in Louisiana. It started through a very unintended process, I believe. I originally from one of 13 kids in a rather rural and difficult, challenging Louisiana, quite poor. But I was fortunate to go through a series of challenges that ultimately landed me in college. And once there, I was fortunate to get involved in the civil rights struggle. Had an opportunity to meet people like Dr. King, meeting others in the student nonviolent movement at that time, and eventually led me to some openings in leadership that propelled me into the military, where I served in the Army. But I had a calling for public service, and ultimately went to Howard University Law School and settled in this area. But it was a long, difficult struggle over many years and some very difficult challenges that ultimately got me involved in public service.
Tell us a little about your most satisfying achievement as county executive. I know you've had quite a road to travel. Talk a little bit about what your most satisfying achievement is.
I think the most satisfying achievement would probably be to get the financial house of Montgomery County in order. When I assumed the office 6.5 years ago, we were quite literally in debt. First time I think the county has experienced the level of debt that we had. This was prior to the recession. Well over $200 million. And then when you add the recession on top of that, we've had to make adjustments that eliminated $2.7 billion in budgetary gaps. Through a lot of very difficult and unusual measures, we were able to resurrect the county's budgetary process. We were able to ensure that we put the county in a much more sustainable financial position. And as of today, we are higher in terms of our financial reserves. We maintain our AAA bond rating. Our finances are much stronger. In fact, we'll be leaving pretty soon to go back to Wall Street to argue for our AAA bond rating again. So I think if I had to identify any single item of achievement, I think it would probably be getting the county's financial house in order.
Okay. Let's see. Also, talk a little bit about additional challenges that you had to face along the way, just to give us some ideas, such as the story that we've shared before about how you grew up.
Well, as I indicated before, I was very poor. One of 13 kids. We lived literally in a 3-room house, not 3 bedrooms, not 3 bathrooms, 3 rooms, period. I struggled early part of my life with sicknesses. I struggled with challenges of poverty. And all of this was in the height of Jim Crow. My mother, which I look at today as probably the strongest person in my life and who had given me so much guidance, always had an idea that I could be much better. You know, I played football. I played quarterback on the football team, and my high school football coach thought that I was a pretty good athlete, but he also thought I was quite smart as an athlete. They urged me, by the time I finished high school, to go to college. and I was reluctant to do so. But I had no money, did not receive any kind of athletic scholarships, and eventually tried to get into a program at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I walked up to the business office, and they said, "Hey, you're not qualified for the program. You have no authorization. You can't participate." Literally, they turned me away 4 times that day because I constantly came back over and over and over again trying to get into the program. And so finally, they suggested that I take a job if I wanted to with the outside maintenance crew, which meant picking up trash and cutting grass around the university campus. And so I did that, and I did that for that entire summer. Earned enough at least to start the first semester in school. But when I said pick up trash and cutting grass around the university campus, essentially what that meant was being more what we describe as a lawn person. And I did that. Somewhere during that summer, I made up my mind that the only grass that I would cut in the future would be on grass of property that I actually own. And I don't know how it came to me, how it would develop, but I made that promise and commitment to myself. And literally right there, I turned everything around. And so I became the student government president of the 10,000 students at the time. I was head of the ROTC brigade. I went into the military, served as a captain in Vietnam. I received 4 degrees, graduated from Howard University, top of my class in law school, advanced degree in law, assistant dean at Howard, professor of law at Howard University, White House fellow, you name it. But it was that summer, that struggle. But I come from a very humble background.
In case you're just tuning in, you're listening to Montgomery Mosaic. I'm Ron Thompson, along with Deborah Milo. We have a Montgomery County Executive, Ike Liggett, in studio with us. To what do you credit your successes in breaking through so many barriers during your career?
I would have to go back to my mom. She was 13 kids. She really stressed 3 things in my life. I think it was education, the value of knowledge and learning, hard work. She believed that you could make a difference if you're willing to work and roll up your sleeves and do as much as you possibly can, whatever you do. And then I think the moral and ethical standards that she instilled in all of her kids. That is, you have to do the right thing. And we were very religious. Go to church, Bible studies, you name it. She stressed those 3 things. So I would suggest hard work, a strong educational background, that is the value of learning, and of course your religious values. Those are the 3 things. Now, you could describe it in some other format, and I think I've heard people describe it differently, but when you look at it, I think those are the 3 things that I would say that she's instilled in me.
Mr. Leggett, in August you were elected president of the County Executives of America, putting you and the county on a national stage. What opportunities does that offer?
Well, it offers a great deal more work, for one. But more importantly, it does place Montgomery County on the national stage, and it allows us to look at some of the things that we've done in Montgomery County and to help other communities around the nation, and to also learn from other communities, and to provide a platform for best practices in government, to have a platform to try to make things better. And of course, when we're fighting the challenges we see in Washington, it is a good place in which to work and which to make the kinds of arguments that we've made about how we need to work together. But it is a real challenge, especially at this time when you have so much dysfunction at the national level. I think part of the challenge for me, and part of the reason why people were attracted to my taking on this responsibility, is because of the success we have in Montgomery County. You look at it across the board, we've been quite successful in virtually every area of local governance that you could find. We receive more awards than I could imagine, people could imagine, when you look at the National Association of Counties and the number of awards Montgomery County receives in technology and criminal justice, information technology. You go through the entire list of it. Montgomery County is spelled very well.
When we come back, we're going to talk more with Montgomery County Executive Ike Liggett, along with Deborah Milo, on our new show here on WOL. This is Montgomery Mosaic.
.50 WOL AM, where information is power.
Good morning, it's WOL Traffic and Weather Report, brought to you by CQ. South Capitol Street at Danbury Street, south of Chesapeake Street. Near Bowling, everything is opened. The accident cleared. It's still going to be a little slow on 295 southbound after Howard Road with the left lane of 4 blocked by the concrete barriers, long-term construction there. Heads up if you're heading into Virginia, southbound 95, tractor trailer flipped over. Only the left lane is getting by near Dale City. The big backup on 95 growing now southbound. Make the easy switch to CQ. Get the tools you need like free debit cards. Ditch your bank and switch to CQ. Visit secumd.org. CQ, different direction. Now your WOL weather forecast for today, mostly cloudy, highs in the low 70s. Clouds overnight down to about 60 for low. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy, chance of an afternoon shower and a high near 75. Steve Hirschhorn for News Talk 1450 WOL, where information is power.
WOL.
Mr. Leggett, when you were at Southern University and a student leader for civil rights, you actually met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Tell me about that experience.
Well, it was a highly unusual experience. In fact, I had an opportunity to meet him twice. The first time that I met him was at a retreat in North Carolina, in Blue Ridge, North Carolina. And he was speaking on a retreat not very far from the one that I was actually working at. And going there were probably maybe 1,200 people sitting in the audience. And you have to keep in mind how powerful his voice was. And when you see Dr. King, he was a rather short person. People didn't realize that because you hear the voice, you assume that the person is much larger. When you see him, he's rather small. He has a beautiful voice. And he was able to speak in such an eloquent way, in such a direct and personal way. Now, there are 1,200 people probably sitting in the audience. And I thought he was talking directly to me and only to me. And there's such an unusual feeling to be in such a large number of people, a large audience, and you feel as though the speaker is talking directly to you. That's a gift. That's a unique attribute of Dr. King that I think people don't realize. When we hear people today, we have microphones that can boom in such a level with all the technology. You didn't have all of that back in the 60s. That didn't exist. And so the ability to communicate in such large audiences that way. Then afterwards, we had an opportunity to go up and sort of say hello to him as a student. So I was just mesmerized, if you will, just by listening to him. And the words just really resonated very well with me. I will never forget that moment.
With all the things that's going on in our society, especially here in Montgomery County, do you think that we are actually moving towards the world that Dr. King envisioned in his famous I Have a Dream speech?
I think that we still have a great deal of distance to go, but I think that when you look at it comparatively, Montgomery County probably has done much better than most jurisdictions. We are having, for example, right now, a festival called The Worlds of Montgomery County, whereby we are literally bringing people from all over the world. We have 160 different languages that are spoken in our school system. We just returned on a trip to China. We've been to Asia and India. We've been to South Korea. We're probably doing Brazil next year. It is an opportunity for us to reach out to bring people together. But we still have some challenges, and those challenges are reflected, for example, when you see the disparity between test scores of many of our students. You see the disparities as it relates to some disproportionate number of minority students in the criminal justice system. It suggests that we've made improvements, and Montgomery County is probably better off than most communities in terms of those improvements in bringing people together. But we still have a great deal of work to go, and I think that that dream that Dr. King had for our nation, I think is one that is still in process.
You are listening to Montgomery Mosaic. It's a new show on WOL with your host, Deborah Milo, and yours truly, Ron Thompson. We are talking with County Executive Ike Leggett. Mr. County Executive, if you could see into a crystal ball, what would likely be the most difficult issues facing Montgomery County in the next few years, and what do you think it will take to address these?
Well, it's all about money, money, money. And people say, oh, you laugh at that when you say that. But when you translate that into money, technology follows, transportation follows, education follows, the environment follows. We have great people in this county, great leadership across the entire board. And we have come up with innovative, creative ways in which to do things. We're doing them far more effectively than we've done in the past. We're bringing people together. But at the end of the day, there's still a gap. At the end of the day, there's still the need to have the resources to achieve much of what you want to achieve. And so without the financial wherewithal, without the ability to provide the resources that are needed, the personnel, the technology, and all the things that go with that, you're not going to go as far as you want. So I tell people that the financial stability of our county's sustainability is something that is really valued, and we have to keep that at the forefront because it allows us to go much further in the innovation and creativity and the things we want to do. Just to take an example, look at what we're talking about now in terms of libraries. Libraries are now becoming much different than they were before. Libraries are transforming from the old kinds of shelf books that you had now to e-books and all the technology goes in the library. We see the future for that, and we see the opportunity to expand and to grow with different types of libraries, for example. But it takes money to make that transition, to buy the e-books, to have the technology, have the personnel that's properly trained, to do all those things we need. Over a period of time, it'll be much cheaper for us to do that, but that transitional cost is quite high.
We'd like to ask you a question pertaining to your tenure as county executive. Can you describe for us where the county was before you became elected in this position and how you envision it being once you leave?
Well, when I came in, I said there were two things that would impact the county that we had to address. One was the financial stability of the county, whereby I found the county quite literally in debt, $200+ million in debt, and we've been able to change that. And all of that occurred prior to the onset of the recession. The second thing for the county was to how the county would effectively manage change. The county was in transition here. We were becoming more diverse, we were becoming much older, and so we had to manage the change. So those two pillars, how do you have budgets and have sustainability and get our financial house in order? And then secondly, how do you effectively manage change? I think that we've made great strides in both of those things. We are now in a much better financial position in the county. We are embracing change and working on that in a way that many other communities have just dreamed about doing. But I think for the future, we have to consistently work at those things, because when you bring the number of people that we have in Montgomery County who reside here, when you see the financial challenges that for the future, you see how we are so tied to the national and state government, you can't assume that those things are fixed and forever rested and therefore you can walk away from them. The move to ensure that we have the transportation, the transit, the environmental sensitivity that we have, all of those things require a great deal of work and ongoing effort. And I think that we can get there, but we have to be persistent, consistent about how we do it.
Mr. Leggett, you know, young people are such a vital part of our community construct. Can you tell me what is it that you would tell young people today about leadership and how important education is to get to leadership opportunities?
First of all, I would hope that young people understand the value of education. That is, that in society today, you are competing not just with your classmates sitting next to you in your classroom, but literally for students all over the world. And if you're not engaged educationally, if you're not engaged in a way that is meaningful for yourself and for society, you'll be left behind. And so for leaders to be effective, leaders must be knowledgeable. And to be knowledgeable, you have to get educated. And so I stress that a great deal. The educational achievement of our students is foremost for their future, for the development, and also for our country, because we want kids who are well-educated, well-rounded, and able to compete in an international global society.
You're listening to Montgomery Mosaic. I'm Ron Thompson, along with Deborah Milo. We have County Executive Ike Leggett in studio with us. Talk for a minute about the government shutdown and how that is affecting Montgomery County, the state of Maryland, the domino effect that this thing, as it continues in the shutdown, what's going to happen?
Well, in Montgomery County, we have 70,000 federal employees that are residents of Montgomery County. Given the salaries that they make, and you look at the income tax distribution and contributions they make to our economy in Montgomery County alone, that translates into $500,000, $500,000 per day. So each day that number of employees are off not working, it potentially costs the county $500,000 per day. That does not include federal contractors who are not part of the federal government. Lockheed Martin, for example, had to let off 3,000 people. They will never get that money back, I don't believe. Some of the federal employees very well may. Look at the hotels, motels, taxes, restaurants. There's a domino effect across the board that we have not been able to calculate yet because the strike is ongoing. But it's a huge cost to our economy, to this region, and the kind of cost that will really have some dire consequences. We talked a few minutes ago about education. Well, part of the resources we need for education comes from those tax dollars. So when you lose those tax dollars, it precludes you from doing some of the things that you would want to do in order to make certain that you have the kind of people in place, the technology, and all the things you need for our educational system. So it's a huge impact for us, and one that I hope we can avoid in the future, because we simply cannot run government and run our economy this way.
I know that you're in the county a great deal talking to the citizenry, and I know that they seriously are so appreciative of your efforts and when you do that. Have you heard anything, some of the comments from the citizenry about the government shutdown?
Well, for example, citizens see those things that are most obvious to them. That is, that they are affected by a program that is closed. They may see that, and therefore those people would react. But unfortunately, there are people who do not realize this, the ancillary impact to them down the line. For example, when I say to people, there's a $500 million loss because of income tax, people don't recognize that because they assume, well, somebody else is out of work. That has nothing to do with me. It has an awful lot to do with you, because those people are paying income tax and we no longer have that. And so it takes a while before the full impact of what has happened trickles down to the average citizen, because unless you're directly impacted by it, far too often people don't believe that they're affected by it, but they are in fact affected by it.
It's impacting everyone. I know that in the community, I have an opportunity to hear the same types of comments from everyone. But it's good to know that we have a county executive who understands and is sensitive to the needs of the citizenry and considers them to be very, very important. Can I ask you about the trip to China? I wanted to hear a little bit about that.
Well, in fact, this is my fourth trip to China. I first went to China in 1980 at a very early point when China was just beginning to open up a little bit broader in terms of the people that would come and visit China. And it was quite a unique trip in 1980. And I've gone back now 3 additional times since the 1980 trip, and I've seen tremendous change over a period of time. I think very few nations in the world in the existence of our history could have had such profound change in such a rapid period of time. This was a trip that primarily paid by the individual persons who attended and or their sponsors. The government did not pay for any of this. I think we paid about $6,000 or $7,000. We had 90 people to attend. It was divided into several pieces. One was business economic opportunity, whereby we engaged with a number of Chinese businesses and signed a few agreements. The other was more or less of a sister-city relationship, whereby we are partnered with the city of Xi'an for a sister-city relationship with Montgomery County. So it was primarily focused on technology, biotechnology. It was a wonderful, very informative trip, and I think that we will see great benefits for the county and for our region for years to come.
You're listening to Montgomery Mosaic. It's a half-hour show on third Wednesday of each month. It features topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. Bron Thompson, along with my co-host, Deborah Milo. County Executive Ike Leggett is in studio. And if you could, for us, County Executive, talk to us about some of the people that you'd like for us to have on the show to continue talking about Montgomery County.
Well, first of all, let me thank the station for permitting and working with Montgomery County to give us this outlet that would help us to explain the things that we're doing in Montgomery County. I think this is a wonderful partnership, and I'm glad that we were able to initiate this. Secondly, I would think that the show should really talk about the broad aspects of Montgomery County, not just from the governmental standpoint of view, but also from everyday citizens and people who are engaged in the community. Clearly, I would anticipate having government leaders to be guests on the show, but I would also want us to talk to people in the nonprofit sector, some of the business people in Montgomery County, because all of those pieces help to make and provide a picture of the county. And I also want people to be critical. There are some areas of the county where we can improve, and so we should not shy away from having good discussions about some of the challenges, because by having those discussions, we can learn and come up with ways in which to improve and make our county better. And I also hope that people could talk about the region. That is, how does Montgomery County fit in with the state and with the broader region of the Washington, D.C. area, because we operate within that environment. So it would be a combination, in my opinion, of government leaders, a broad array of citizens, of businesses, community activists, as well as people throughout the region that may have a particular focus on things that are happening in Montgomery County. And if we pull all of those things together, we talk about them in a broad, objective manner, I think that we'll provide a real community service for our entire community, with which everyone, I think, would benefit.
Mr. Leggett, I can't thank you enough for all the comments you've had. That's all we have time for today. You've been listening to Montgomery Mosaic with County Executive Ike Leggett. I'm Deborah Milo, here with Ron Thompson. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget the World of Montgomery Festival in Wheaton on Sunday, October 20th, noon to 5 p.m. And be sure to tune in again at this same time for our next show on November 20th.
This is Montgomery Mosaic, I should say, with Deborah Milo and Ron Thompson on 1450 WOL.
WOL and WOLDCnews.com.